You know, they say you should never trust anyone with your money. But I thought, what about your own family? Your wife? Your son? My name is Aiden. For my entire life, I played by the rules. I built a beautiful home, a thriving business, and a single, shared bank account for everyone I loved. I thought it was the ultimate sign of trust. I was dead wrong. While I was working day and night to secure one final fortune for our future, my own family was secretly tearing it all down. They were spending lavishly, silencing the one good soul in the house, and even stealing from the loyal staff who depended on us. I was the last to know, the king of a castle built on lies. But then, I found out. And let me tell you, the quiet, gentle grandpa disappeared. I planned a surprise for them so perfect, so just. They never saw it coming. Before I show you exactly how I got my revenge, I have to ask you a question. Where are you watching from right now? Drop a comment and let me know. Are you from Texas, Ontario, London? Seeing your support from all over is what keeps this channel going. To my regulars, the Silent Justice family, I see you and I thank you. Your stories in the comments give me strength. And if you're new here, do us both a favor. Hit that subscribe and crew button and ring the IQ bell because you won't want to miss what happens next. You're about to learn why you should never, ever underestimate a grandpa with a plan. Now, pull up a chair. Let me tell you how I discovered the betrayal and how I made sure they'd never forget the day they crossed me. My name is Aiden. For 68 years, I believed a man's legacy was measured in the strength of his family and the solidity of his home. The Manteo estate was my pride and joy. Not just the land and the grand house, but the life we built within it. I thought it was permanent. I thought it was real. It all centered on a single, shared bank account. After my construction business took off, I sat at this very dining table with my wife, Madison. "This is for us," I told her, my hand covering hers. "For our security, for Owen, for Hazel, for the grandchildren, for everything." I wanted us to be a unit, a team. Madison, with her sharp eye for detail, would manage the inflows and outflows. It paid for the mortgage, the food on our table, and, most importantly, the salaries of the people who helped this house feel like a home. Levi, our groundskeeper, Maria, our housekeeper, and James, our security. I trusted her. I trusted all of them. While I was pouring my soul into one last massive project, a real estate development called the Aiden Legacy, I drew strength from the symphony of my family around me. The smell of Madison's perfume in the hall, the sound of my son Owen's confident laughter, Hazel's chatter about her charity galas, and my grandchildren. Ethan, with his father's smile but a heart 10 times softer, was constantly showing me plans for his foundation, Ethan's Haven, which supported children with physical disabilities. He'd use his allowance and sometimes a little more from the family account to buy equipment. The pride I felt in him was a physical warmth in my chest. Then there was Ava, my 23-year-old granddaughter with eyes that saw too much. She was the one who would find me in my study late at night and place a cup of tea on my desk without a word. She was my quiet ally, the calm in the storm of my ambition. I would look around at this beautiful, bustling life and feel a sense of completion. I had done it. I had provided. I was the patriarch, the provider, the king of a castle that echoed with love and loyalty. The walls felt thick, the foundations deep. I slept the sleep of the just, completely unaware that the very beams holding up my world were already rotting from the inside out. The first crack in my perfect world was so small I almost missed it. It was a Thursday. I was looking for a missing pen and wandered into the kitchen where Maria was polishing silver. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Everything all right, Maria?" I asked. She jumped, clutching a spoon to her chest. "Oh, Mr. Aiden, yes, fine, just allergies." But her voice was tight. Later that week, I saw Levi, a man who usually had a joke and a story about his prized tomatoes, staring blankly at the rose bushes. When I approached, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The roses are fighting me this year, sir," was all he said. A cold, small stone of unease settled in my gut. These people weren't just employees. They were part of the fabric of our home. Their sorrow felt like a stain on my own happiness. Meanwhile, the spending in the house seemed to escalate. Owen pulled up in a new Tesla. Hazel's shopping bags bore the names of designers I only knew from magazines. When I casually mentioned it over dinner, Madison patted my hand. "Aiden, dear, don't worry your head. It's under control. We're celebrating your success." But it didn't feel like a celebration. It felt frantic. I noticed Ethan had become quieter, withdrawn. One evening, I found him in the library staring at a spreadsheet for Ethan's Haven. "Trouble in paradise?" I asked, taking the seat beside him. He closed the laptop quickly. "No, Grandpa. Just budgeting. Mom said the family account is a little tight this quarter, so I have to scale back some programs." He tried to smile. "It's fine." Tight? The word echoed in the silent, opulent room. With the millions in that account, it should never be tight. That was the moment the cold stone in my gut turned to ice. Later that night, I passed by the grand living room and heard Owen's hushed, sharp voice. "And if you ever go to Dad with your nonsense again, Ethan, so help me." I didn't hear the rest. I didn't need to. The king in his castle stood in the dark hallway, a stranger in his own home, listening to a threat where there should have been laughter. The illusion was crumbling, and the real picture emerging was terrifying. The silence in the house became deafening. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, watching the performance of my family's life with new, critical eyes. Madison's smiles were a little too bright. Owen's boasts about his business acumen felt hollow. Hazel's discussions of her philanthropic efforts seemed like a grotesque parody when I thought of Ethan's Haven struggling for funds. The final push came from Ava. She cornered me in my study, her face pale with a determined fear. "Grandpa, we need to talk," she whispered even though we were alone. She told me everything. How Madison had been slowly reducing the staff's pay for months, claiming market adjustments. How Owen and Hazel had taken out $100,000 for an investment opportunity that never materialized. How they had explicitly forbidden her and Ethan from bothering me with any of it. "They said you were under too much pressure, that the legacy project was too important to risk," she said, her voice trembling. "But Grandpa, they're lying. Levi is behind on his mortgage. Maria's son might have to leave college." The ice in my gut exploded into a cold, clarifying fire. The gentle Grandpa Aiden was gone, replaced by a man with a mission. After Ava left, I waited until the house was asleep. The moon was high as I sat down at my computer, my hand steady for the first time in weeks. I opened the online portal for our joint account, the account I had generously set up but never micromanaged. The screen glowed in the dark room. I started scrolling, and with every line item, a piece of my heart turned to ash. There were thousands to luxury boutiques, 5-figure transfers to resort accounts, a payment for the Tesla. And then I saw them. The payroll records. Levi's salary cut by 20%. Maria's cut by 15%. An entire payment to James skipped entirely the previous month, all authorized by Madison. I sat there for hours until the sun began to tinge the sky with light. I didn't feel rage anymore. I felt a profound, terrifying calm. This was no longer my family. They were occupants in a house I owned, and it was time for the landlord to serve notice. The plan began to form in my mind, not as a burst of anger but as a slow, precise blueprint for justice. They thought I was a tired old man, lost in his dreams of legacy. They were about to learn that I was still the best builder they'd ever known. Right now, you know what I know. You've seen the lies. And if you're anything like me, you're thinking, it's time. What would you do if you were in my shoes? I'm about to show you the plan I crafted in the quiet of my study, But before I do, hit that subscribe button and don't forget the bell. Now, let's get back to it. The sun rose, casting long, accusatory shadows across my study. The printed bank statements lay before me, a testament to my own blindness. Each line item was a betrayal, not just of me, but of every principle I thought this family stood for. The lavish spending was a sickness, but the stolen wages from Levi and Maria? That was a sin. It was a calculated, cruel act that showed a profound lack of character. My wife, my son, they were strangers to me. The initial white-hot rage had cooled and hardened into something else, a cold, unyielding resolve. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to plead. What would that achieve? They would offer tearful apologies, make excuses, and then continue their behavior in secret. No, they had operated in the shadows, so would I. But where their secrecy was for greed, mine would be for justice. I looked at the family portrait on my desk, the one from last summer, all of us smiling on the porch. I didn't see a happy memory anymore. I saw a lie. I picked it up, the glass cool against my fingers. For a moment, I considered smashing it. Instead, I carefully, methodically, pried the backing off. I removed the photo, and with a pair of sharp scissors, I cut myself out of it. I was no longer part of that picture. I placed the hollowed-out frame back on my desk. A perfect metaphor. My Aiden Legacy project was complete. The millions were secure in a separate account they knew nothing about. That was my first weapon. The second was the house itself. The Monteo estate was in my name alone, a fact I realized they had all conveniently forgotten. I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, a discreet man named Mr. Evans who had handled my affairs for 30 years. I didn't explain the whole sordid story, just gave him clear, unemotional instructions. David, I need to transfer the deed of the Monteo property into a new trust, effective immediately. The beneficiary is to be my granddaughter, Ava. This is not a discussion. Draw up the papers. His silence on the other end was heavy with unasked questions, but his "right away, Aiden," was all I needed. The second call was to my financial advisor. Freeze the shared account, Mark. Don't drain it. I want them to see the zero balance but not be able to touch a cent. Let them panic. Then I opened a new private account and initiated the first transfer. I calculated every cent of the stolen wages, then doubled it. A life-changing bonus for Levi, for Maria, for James. It wasn't just back pay. It was a message. I see your loyalty. I value it. I printed the transfer confirmations, each one feeling like laying a brick in a new, more honest foundation. I was no longer Grandpa Aiden, the gentle patriarch. I was the architect again, but this time, I wasn't building a dream. I was designing a demolition. The plan was set, a precise sequence of events that would unfold not with a bang, but with the quiet, irrevocable finality of a legal document. Now, I just had to live with the enemy while I waited for the perfect moment to strike. The hardest part would be looking them in the eye, kissing Madison's cheek, and pretending the man they knew still existed. He didn't. He had been dismantled, piece by piece, in the dark hours of that morning. Living in that house during those following weeks was a special kind of hell. I had to wear the mask of the oblivious, tired old man. I ate the meals prepared with money that should have gone to Maria's son's tuition. I nodded along as Owen bragged about his business instincts, knowing he had squandered $100,000 of family security on a fantasy. I watched Madison play the gracious lady of the manor, her hands that signed away the staff's stability now delicately pouring tea. Every laugh felt like a shard of glass in my skin. Every casual touch from Madison made my flesh crawl. I took to spending more and more time in my study, not working, but stewing in my own quiet fury, refining the plan. I was a ghost, observing the living, waiting for my moment to cross over and make my presence known. The strain showed in subtle ways. My appetite faded. I became quieter, more withdrawn. They mistook it for fatigue from my recently finished project. "You've been so quiet, dear," Madison said one evening, her voice dripping with false concern. She placed a hand on my forehead, a gesture that once felt loving, but now felt like a violation. "Is the pressure of the legacy fund finally getting to you? You should relax, enjoy what we have. We have so much." What we have, I thought, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. What you've taken. I saw the dynamic now with painful clarity. Ethan was a nervous wreck, jumping at his father's voice. He avoided family meals, claiming work on his foundation. I knew the truth. He was ashamed and powerless. Ava, however, was my rock. Our eyes would meet across the room, a silent exchange of strength and understanding. She knew I was planning something. She saw the steel behind my tired eyes and gave an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. One afternoon, she slipped a note under my study door. It simply read, "Levi's wife's surgery is next Thursday. Maria's son missed his tuition payment. They're scared." The note wasn't just information. It was fuel. The tension in the house was a palpable thing, a thick fog the others were blissfully breathing while Ava and I choked on it. I started taking long walks with Levi under the guise of discussing the garden. "The soil seems rich this year," he'd say, his voice hollow. "Aye, Levi," I'd reply, "but even the richest soil needs care. It remembers neglect." I handed him a plain envelope. "For your wife," I said quietly. "No arguments. This is long overdue." The confusion and then the dawning, tearful gratitude in his eyes solidified my resolve. This was for him, for Maria, for James, for Ava and Ethan. This wasn't just my revenge, it was their restitution. I was a bomb, ticking down silently in the heart of their world. They danced around me, oblivious to the blast radius I was about to create. The perfect moment presented itself 2 weeks later. Hazel was planning a small, intimate birthday party for herself. The guest list was 50 people. The caterers were the most expensive in the state. I saw the invoices left brazenly on the kitchen counter, all paid from the shared account. They were still spending, still living in their grand illusion, even as the financial ground was turning to quicksand beneath their feet. The audacity was breathtaking. It was the final confirmation that they felt no guilt, only entitlement. The day before the party, I set the final pieces in motion. I met with Mr. Evans in a quiet corner of a library downtown, far from prying eyes. He slid the documents across the table. The deed transfer to the new Aiden Manteo Trust, with Ava as the sole beneficiary and executor, was complete. It was done. The house was no longer mine to give. It was already hers. I signed a separate document granting me power of attorney to act on her behalf until the revelation was public. I also had him draw up a formal, notarized letter stating that the shared family account was being audited and permanently frozen due to suspicious and unauthorized activity. It was cold, legal, and final. Holding those papers felt heavier than any contract I'd ever signed for my business. The night of the party, the house was transformed. It was filled with the clinking of glasses, the sound of a string quartet, and the hollow laughter of people I didn't know. Owen held court, the proud son of the great Aiden. Madison floated through the crowd, the epitome of grace and wealth. They were at their absolute peak, basking in the glow of a fortune they were actively destroying. I watched Hazel accept compliments on her dress, a $5,000 designer original, while I knew Maria was in the kitchen, washing dishes, worrying about her son. I played my part. I smiled, I shook hands, I was the vaguely proud grandfather in the corner. But inside, I was a general, surveying the battlefield before the charge. I saw Ethan, looking miserable in a suit, cornered by one of Hazel's friends. I saw Ava, watching it all with a calm, knowing stillness from the staircase, a ghost in waiting just like me. As the party wound down and the last of the guests departed, leaving a house littered with the evidence of their extravagance. Empty champagne flutes, discarded napkins, the lingering smell of expensive perfume, the family collapsed onto the sofas in the grand living room, flushed with wine and self-congratulation. "That was a triumph, darling," Owen said to Hazel, pulling her close and kissing her forehead. "Everyone was there. Absolutely everyone." "Wasn't it?" Madison sighed, content, kicking off her heels and tucking her feet beneath her. "Everything is just perfect." They were fat and happy, like wolves after a successful hunt. They felt secure, untouchable. The mask of contentment on their faces was the final signal. It was time. I stood up. The room fell quiet, expecting a toast or a word of thanks for the lovely party. "I'm glad you all think so," I said, my voice calm and clear, cutting through the post-party haze. "Because we need to have a family meeting. Right now, there are some financial matters we need to discuss." The look they exchanged was not of concern, but of mild irritation. They thought I was about to bore them with money talk. They had no idea that the foundation of their perfect world was half a second from crumbling into dust. They gathered in the living room with an air of indulgent impatience. Owen checked his phone, his thumb scrolling through notifications. Hazel stifled a yawn, examining a chip in her manicure. Madison looked at me with a placating smile. "What is it, Aiden? Can't it wait until morning? We're all tired. It was a long night." "No," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. It had a new edge to it, one they didn't recognize. "It cannot." I walked slowly to my desk, the eyes of my family following me with a mixture of boredom and annoyance. I picked up a single piece of paper, the invoice for Hazel's $15,000 custom sofa, paid for from the shared account just days prior. I didn't hand it to them. I simply held it up for them all to see, the number glaring under the soft living room lights. "Hazel," I began, my tone deceptively mild, almost conversational. "This sofa, is it comfortable?" She blinked, thrown by the question. "Well, yes, of course it is. It's Italian leather. You know that." "I'm sure it is," I replied, my gaze never leaving hers. "And Owen, that new watch, the one you were showing off to your friends tonight, the Patek Philippe." I turned my head slowly towards him. "It keeps good time, does it?" Owen's smile was condescending, the same one he used on junior associates he thought were fools. "It's a Patek, Dad. It's more than just a timepiece. It's an heirloom, an investment." "I see," I nodded, placing the invoice back down with a precise tap on the desk. "So, we have a $15,000 sofa and a watch that costs more than Levi makes in a year. Meanwhile, Ethan's Haven is shutting down its summer camp program for disabled children because the family account is, and I quote, tight." I made air quotes with my fingers, the gesture feeling foreign and sharp. The room went very still. The mask of irritation on Owen's face cracked, replaced by a flicker of panic. Hazel's bored expression vanished, her eyes widening. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Owen said, his voice a notch higher. "We manage the money just fine. Mother handles it. There's no need for this interrogation." "Do you?" I asked, my voice still quiet but now cutting like a blade. I finally locked eyes with Madison. Her smile had vanished, replaced by a pale, tight-lipped silence. "Do you manage it when you authorize a 15% cut to Maria's pay? When you skip an entire payment to James? When you tell Levi that his 20 years of loyalty isn't worth a simple cost of living increase, all while you're planning a 50-person gala?" The color drained from Madison's face. "Aiden, that's not the market rates. We had to make some adjustments for the long-term stability." "Adjustments?" I repeated the word softly, letting it hang in the air like a bad smell. "Is that what you call it? Stealing from the people who clean your toilets and guard your door while you buy Italian leather and Swiss heirlooms?" Hazel gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Owen shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger and shame. "How dare you speak to Mother that way? We are your family. This is our money, too. We have a right to enjoy it." "You were," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but it carried in the dead silence of the room, more powerful than any shout. "You were my family. But a family doesn't do this. A family doesn't betray its own. A family doesn't starve the good to feed the greedy." I could see the confusion and dawning terror in their eyes. This wasn't the reaction they expected. They thought I would be sad, maybe angry in a blustering, impotent way. They didn't expect this cold, forensic dismantling of their lies. They were finally realizing that the quiet, gentle grandpa was gone, and in his place stood a stranger with nothing left to lose. "The shared account," I said, finally delivering the first calculated blow. I picked up the notarized letter from my lawyer. "Is frozen, as of 9 a.m. this morning, pending a full forensic audit. Every single dollar you've taken will be accounted for. Every wire transfer, every luxury purchase, every stolen wage." The room erupted. Owen was shouting, his voice cracking. Hazel was crying, great heaving sobs. Madison was on her feet, pleading, trying to reach for me, her words a jumbled mess of excuses and tears. I stood perfectly still, a rock against their storm, the documents held firmly in my hand. This was just the first tremor, the warning shock. They were scared about the money. They had no idea that the real earthquake, the one that would shatter their home, their identity, and their future, was still to come. The house, the legacy, their very place in the world, it was already gone. And they were about to find out. The room was in chaos, a cacophony of shouts and sobs that echoed off the vaulted ceilings of the very home they had taken for granted. I let the storm rage for a moment, watching them unravel. Owen paced like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair. "This is insane. You can't just freeze our account. We have bills, commitments." "Commitments?" I repeated, the word tasting like ash. "You should have thought of that before you stole from people who depend on us." Madison finally found her voice, a shrill, desperate sound. "Aiden, please, we can explain. It was for them, for their future. We were investing. The market was down. We had to make cuts. It was just temporary." Her lies were as transparent as glass. I saw the frantic calculation in her eyes, the attempt to fabricate a story that would placate me. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to the intercom system by the door and pressed the button for the staff quarters. "Levi, Maria, James, could you please come to the main living room? Immediately." My voice was calm, a stark contrast to the hysterics around me. Owen froze mid-pace. "What are you doing? Why are you involving the help in a private family matter?" "This stopped being a private family matter when you decided they were your personal piggy bank," I said, my voice low and cold. The three of them entered the room hesitantly, still in their uniforms from working the party. Levi's face was etched with concern. Maria looked frightened, and James stood stoically, his security training kicking in. They huddled together near the doorway, their eyes darting between the distraught family and my imposingly calm figure. I picked up 3 envelopes from my desk, the ones I had prepared days ago. I walked over to them, ignoring my spluttering family. "Levi," I said, handing him the first thick envelope. "This is for you. It contains every cent of the wages that were unfairly withheld from you, plus a bonus. It should more than cover your wife's medical bills, and then some. There is also a letter of recommendation, should you ever wish to leave this employment, stating that you are the most loyal and skilled groundskeeper I have ever had the privilege of knowing." His hands trembled as he took it. "Mr. Aiden, I don't know what to say." "Maria," I continued, handing her the second envelope. "This is for you and your son. The back pay, a bonus, and a guaranteed tuition payment for his next semester, directly from my private account. Your dedication to this family has been unwavering, and you were repaid with treachery. That ends tonight." She clutched the envelope to her chest, tears streaming down her face, unable to form words. James, I said, turning to the stoic man, your missed payment, a significant bonus, and my personal thanks for your discretion and loyalty. This house has been safe because of you, even when the danger was inside it. He simply nodded, a look of profound respect in his eyes as he took the envelope. Thank you, sir. The silence from my family was now absolute, broken only by Maria's quiet weeping. They stared, utterly bewildered. I had just given away what they would consider a small fortune to the help. Their minds couldn't process it. Owen found his voice first, a strangled, outraged whisper. You're giving them our money. I turned back to face them, the architects of this ruin. No, Owen. I'm giving them my money. The money you had access to is gone. But my wealth, my true legacy, was never in that shared account. You were all so busy looking into the trough, you never stopped to wonder if the well had run dry. The confusion on their faces was a pitiful thing. They were still stuck on the money, on the frozen account, on the envelopes. They couldn't see the bigger picture. It was time to show them. Ava, Ethan, I said softly, could you come stand by me, please? Ava moved without hesitation, her head held high, a pillar of strength beside me. Ethan looked terrified, his eyes wide as he glanced from his furious father to me. He took a hesitant step forward, then another, until he stood on my other side. What is this, Aiden? Madison asked, her voice a hollow whisper. What are you doing? I am securing my legacy, I said, my voice ringing with a finality that made the air itself feel still. The Aiden Legacy Project was a success. The millions it generated are safe and secure. It was never part of that shared account. It was always separate. I saw the dawning, horrific understanding in Owen's eyes. He had been counting on that money, on his future inheritance. The frozen account was a setback. This was a catastrophe. But that's not all, I continued, reaching for the final, most important document from my desk. I held up the deed to the Manteo estate. This house, this land, every brick, every blade of grass, it was always in my name. You all just lived here. Of course it's in your name, Dad, Owen said, a desperate, shaky laugh escaping him. It's your house. It'll be mine. Ours. One day. I looked at him, and for a fleeting moment I saw the little boy who used to follow me around the garden. Then the moment passed, and I saw the greedy, entitled man he had become. No, Owen, it won't. I turned to Ava. I placed the deed in her hands. Her fingers closed around it, not with greed, but with a sense of solemn responsibility. As of 4:32 p.m. yesterday, I announced, my voice clear and strong, the deed to this property was legally and irrevocably transferred into a new trust, the Aiden Manteo Trust. Ava is the sole beneficiary and executor. This house, this entire estate, belongs to her. The reaction was not immediate. It took a few seconds for the words to sink in, to travel from their ears to their brains and detonate. Hazel was the first to scream. No! Owen stumbled back as if I'd physically struck him. You gave our house to a child? You can't do that. I'm your son, your firstborn. This is my birthright. Spittle flew from his lips. Madison simply collapsed onto the sofa, her face a mask of utter devastation. She wasn't looking at the deed. She was looking at me, finally understanding the depth of my knowledge, the totality of their betrayal. You knew, she breathed. You knew everything. Ava, I said, ignoring their outbursts, my voice gentle but firm. This is your home. You are now the owner of the Manteo estate. The decision of who lives here, who is welcome within these walls, is now yours and yours alone. I then turned to Ethan. And Ethan, your foundation, Ethan's Haven, will no longer struggle. It is now the primary philanthropic arm of the Aiden Legacy Fund. You will have a guaranteed annual endowment that will allow you to help every child you ever dreamed of helping. Your compassion was the only investment in this family that ever paid a real return. The contrast was absolute. On one side, my grandson and granddaughter, one handed a future of purpose, the other a home built on true values. On the other side, my wife and my son, left with nothing but the consequences of their own avarice. The knife was not just in, it had been twisted. I had taken everything they thought was theirs and given it to the two people who proved they deserved it. The silence that followed was heavier than the shouting. It was the silence of a world ending. Owen was slumped in a chair, staring blankly at the floor, all the fight drained out of him. Hazel's sobs had subsided into silent, shaking tremors. Madison wouldn't look at me at all, her gaze fixed on some distant, horrible point only she could see. I felt no joy, no triumphant thrill, only a profound, bone-deep exhaustion and a sadness so vast it felt like an ocean inside me. I had just dismantled my own family. I had to, but that didn't make the wreckage any less painful to behold. "Ava," I said, my voice now weary, "the floor is yours." Ava took a deep, steadying breath. She looked at the broken figures of her family, and I saw not vengeance in her eyes, but a deep, weary pity. "You can stay," she said, her voice quiet but unwavering. "For 1 month. That is more than enough time for you to find new accommodations. You will not touch anything in this house that is not personally yours. You will treat the staff with the respect they have always deserved. If you cannot abide by these rules, you will leave tonight." It was not a request. It was a decree. She was every bit the lady of the manor, and in that moment she was far more my heir than Owen could ever have been. The following weeks were a strange, quiet purgatory. The mansion felt different. The oppressive weight of their lives was gone, replaced by a clean, if sorrowful, peace. Levi's whistle returned to the garden. Maria hummed while she worked. The house was being cleansed. Owen, Hazel, and Madison moved out on the 28th day. They left without a word, without a goodbye. They packed their designer clothes and their expensive trinkets and disappeared into the life their greed had bought them. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Owen was trying to get a job, that they'd rented a condo. I felt a pang, a father's instinctual worry, but I smothered it. They had made their choices. Tonight, I sit on the porch swing, looking out over the land I love. The sun is setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The swing creaks gently. The door opens behind me and Ava steps out, holding 2 glasses of iced tea. She hands me one and sits beside me. "We got the final approval today," she says softly. "Ethan's Haven is officially expanding. We're building that new community center." I nod, a genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in what feels like years. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." We sit in a comfortable silence, watching the fireflies begin to dance over the lawn that Levi keeps so perfectly. The mansion stands strong behind us, no longer a symbol of a broken dream, but the foundation of a new, more honest one. I thought they had spent my life savings. I thought they had taken everything. But as I sit here with my granddaughter, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of Ethan laughing on the phone inside, planning his next project, I realize they were wrong. They didn't take my legacy. They forced me to find it. It wasn't in the bank statements or the property deeds. It was in the quiet strength of a loyal granddaughter, the compassionate heart of a generous grandson, and the simple, unwavering decency of the people who knew the true value of a home. They spent the money, but I got my legacy back, and it was worth more than all the gold in the world. And so, the house grew quiet again. But this time, it was a peace we had earned. This channel and the stories we tell are built by a community that values truth. You are that community. Seeing your comments from all over the world is what gives these stories their power. If this story felt like a victory, smash that like button. It's the simplest way to say, justice was served. Subscribe to the channel if you believe in standing up for what's right, no matter your age. And tap that bell so you're always in the front row when a new story of quiet strength drops. Remember, your loyalty is a privilege, not a right. Never let anyone take your legacy for granted. Thank you for watching. Stay strong.